Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for part 2 of the Q&A, so let's go ahead and get this started. Alright, first question. Isn't wearing squat shoes the same as heel elevated squats, like putting some leverages under your shoes? I think like what you're thinking about is when people step on plates, and I'm going to say the answer is no. It's not the same. It's not the same. And I could see why you might think that, because you're only thinking in terms of once you're set up, you've got the weight where you want it, and if you put your heels on some plates, you can squat, and your heels are elevated like they would be with squat shoes. But they're not remotely the same thing. With squat shoes, you can take a true 1 rep max, and you can walk it out. There's no chance of you slipping. There's no chance of you having to step up onto a plate or any of these problems. Like it eliminates the risk. In fact, I actually tell people I would never, ever, ever recommend or prescribe that you squat on a plate or on an elevated board. And the reason being, you have to get yourself into position. That's a lot of really looking down. That's a risk of tripping. It's risk of kicking it out from under you, and when you get with a really heavy weight, that becomes really awkward and difficult to do. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Not when shoes have existed. For many of you, these shoes existed before you were ever born. They were popularized already for weightlifting before you were born. They're inexpensive. They're easy to get. Right? So it doesn't make sense to compromise or improvise this by doing plates or boards or anything. And the reason we do this is, again, it turns the squat to a situation where it's slightly more quad dominant, and it also puts you in a situation where most people can get a little deeper. So if you struggle with opening up your hips and reaching depth, like getting to parallel, using squat shoes can be a lot of benefit depending upon the style of squat that you use. I'm a high bar squatter, so I'm back to using the shoes now that I'm in meet prep. I spend a lot of time barefooted. For a lot of people who maybe power squat, it's not as much of an advantage, and I wouldn't necessarily even recommend that you use squat shoes. Right? If you do a wide stance, a low bar power squat, I might not recommend the shoes at all. You're probably better off in flat heels. All right, next question. Does low body fat cause hypotension? I'm at the lowest body fat I've ever been. Okay, so do you have low blood pressure? Right? You're saying you're at the lowest body fat you've ever been. You're asking, can this contribute to hypotension? So people would ask something like this, and my first question would be, are you experiencing a low blood pressure? Like, are you walking in and getting your blood pressure tested, and the doctor or nurse is going, man, this is really low, we need to increase your sodium or something? So why would you ask that? Also, again, are we talking about just having a low healthy blood pressure, or do you mean true hypotension? Like, I know someone very, very close to me who suffers from this, and if they don't get enough salt in their diet, they get to a dangerously low blood pressure, right, to the point of where it's a health risk, to where it causes them problems. They could even pass out. Okay, it's a problem. They're not lean. They're healthy, they're fit, but they're not really lean. Like, no one looks at them and says, oh, that's a shredded person with a six-pack. So again, my point would be, where is this coming from? And here's the other thing. Yes, generally being obese tends to raise blood pressure, and being at a healthy body weight tends to lower blood pressure. But we kind of come back to the other lifestyle components. Is your diet unhealthy? And unhealthy could mean too extreme in either direction. So is your sodium really low? And if you are experiencing a low blood pressure after you've cut down to a lower body fat, I would say most likely the thing for you to do is increase your sodium intake, your salt intake. It's probably that your diet is unhealthy, and I'm not saying that it's healthy to have a lot of salt in your diet always, because for many people it's not. For many people it's extremely dangerous. But you've got to have balance. If you're at a low enough body fat to where blood pressure is low, having nearly zero sodium in your diet is dangerous and unhealthy. So you need to fix that. You need to fix it. And the other thing to think about, have you asked your doctor? Again, if you're experiencing symptoms of low blood pressure, have you tried talking to your doctor about it? Right, this is a medical issue. Why are you going to the Q&As, which you know aren't going to be up for a month? Right? Have you guys ever seen in the last few years, you ask me a question and you get it answered 2 weeks later? Pretty rare. You could be dead by then. Are you just going to wait around and die because Jason Blaha didn't answer your question? I mean, I think I'm a good guy with good information, but, I think you're getting a little extreme. All right, next question and last question of the week. Will you wear knee sleeves in comp and eventually in training? Now, that's a good question because this is one of these two where had you asked me this question 3 or 4 months ago, I might have told you no. I might have told you no. Be like, no, I'm not going to wear knee sleeves because I'm not convinced they add much to your squat. I'm not convinced they're safe. I know knee wraps aren't safe. I'm going to make that clear. I do not advocate knee wraps unless you compete in knee wraps. And even then, you need to ask yourself, how often do you want to put them on? So we come over to the knee sleeves, and the question becomes, how much does it add? Some of the better coaches will tell you 10 to 15, maybe 20 pounds at the most. There's some data behind that, not a lot, but there is some data in support of that. Others are claiming 40 or 50. That doesn't seem to be supported by the evidence. But let's come over and let's say I could get 10 pounds minimum out of a good set of sleeves, like some SBD sleeves. Well, if I'm going to break world records in the squat, that 10 pounds could make or break me. Because I'm looking at what I'm squatting these days in training versus what I'm seeing as records that I need to hit. And it could be a little tight. Like the deadlift is not going to be tight. Like I'm going to absolutely obliterate deadlift records. It's not even going to be close. I'm probably going to be able to break world and national records on deadlifts on first and second attempts. And then break my own records in the same meet. Squatting, it's going to be a little tighter. It's going to be a little tighter. At 10 pounds could matter. So yeah, I will probably need to sleeve up if I'm at a meet where I can set records. I'm probably going to need to do it, which means I'll need to put sleeves on, before I do it. Am I going to wear them for all of my squatting? No, I think that's silly. Right? I think it's silly to do it for all of your squatting. Do it on the peak sets that are closest to being your maxes and then pull them back off. Pull them back off if you need to. It's not a big deal. You'll probably potentially get better quad development if you do. Now, my mind might change on that, but that's what I'm inclined to think because, again, we don't know if they don't risk your knees over time. Now, granted, I only squat once a week. Right? I only squat once a week. I train legs twice, but I only squat once. So maybe not that big of a deal if I left them on for all sets. Okay. But yeah, I will probably need to sleeve up just for the potential, 10 pounds, maybe 15 that I can get out of them. Because it's going to matter when you're going for records. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.